Hey everybody, welcome to the Marketing GC on April 28th. So let's dig in. The slides presented as per our kind of current process is we put our key meeting slides in. So that's what's in here, and happy to open it up to questions. Haley, you had the first one. Haley, are you on? Okay, I will verbalize for Haley and answer it.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, no worries. Go ahead.
I was on another call. I'm like, we have to jump. We have to jump. Yeah. So thank you for already putting a lot of stuff in here. I was literally reading as you were typing because I was eager. It was funny. So on slide 2, it says where we are struggling, large SDR generated, and specifically here I was looking at the growth piece. Growth. So I was asking sort of where those numbers were coming from. Obviously, I added some insight here around the issues, maybe not issues, but maybe some discrepancies and inaccuracies with initial source, because that's the biggest thing I look at for my team isn't did they achieve their number, but where did those come from to make sure that we're bringing value and the right SAOs, especially for growth. So that was where that question initiated from.
Great. So let me answer that in 2 parts. One is the struggle isn't about initial source in particular, but I do want to chat about initial source for a second. The struggle is just we have, FY22 corporate goals that we're trying to achieve. And in various areas, we aren't yet achieving those goals. And so one of those areas is in our large SDR organization. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't about any given SDR not performing or any given team not performing. This is really about 3 things. We made a major org change in large to start Q1. The purpose of the major org change was actually to address the fact that we hadn't been growing our first order business in large for a few quarters. And so we said we need to do something different. We split the team between land reps and expand reps. So first of all, whenever you do an org change like that, it's hard and it takes a little time to set in and to get everybody productive again because you changed everybody's territories. So if you're in sales, you understand that because when your territory change, it takes a little time. So we changed everybody's territories in large and we split the team between land and expand. We had some trouble operationally getting territories in the hands of SDRs for a variety of reasons related to our data, and it was a bit of a struggle. By the end of February, we had territories in place, but then still people had to start kind of getting up to speed. So, and then the last piece is we actually had to rebuild a lot of capacity. So we had a lot of our SDRs move over into sales, which is a great thing. And we're excited about that. And I know they're doing great in sales, but we were behind for 2 reasons on our capacity. One is that, and the other is the business plan required us to hire, I think it was 9 new SDRs. So we were, in large 12, 13 in the hole just to start the quarter. So all of those things work together to be where we are today, which is we're not hitting our goals yet. I'm a little less worried about large growth because I think that we're going to get back on track pretty fast there. And I'm seeing good things from a pipeline perspective. I'll show you real quick my screen. In our large growth SDR team, we focus on both pipeline and SAOs. And while our SAOs are still struggling a bit, that's mostly in my mind due to capacity. We're catching up a little bit on the pipeline. So I'm feeling better about that from a pipeline perspective. And we're just going to have to see how we go here as we go into May. So anyway, if you kind of put all those changes, struggles in one bucket, it's not hard to understand why we're behind. We have a project for everyone who's on this call. We have a project where we're meeting every Monday and every Thursday with a task team who's trying to, obviously capacity is the big issue, but we also want to make sure we're optimized on our handoffs between SDRs and SALs, and we're optimized and making sure that we're working, closely together. And maybe there'll be some tweaks that we make to fix that. So We have Adam Olson on that project with us from a Sal perspective, and a lot of other folks helping us make sure we get back on track here. So that's kind of the overall situation. The initial source situation is different, but something we also need to get better at. So initial source is, in my mind, a limited useful field. So the way Salesforce does it is if you create an opportunity and you convert a contact or convert a lead to a contact on that opportunity, or if you just add the first contact to an opportunity, the initial source of the opportunity is whatever the initial source of that first contact was. That first contact could be anybody from a procurement contact to a random person or the first person we happen to talk to. But it's not accurate to say that's the first touch we've had with the account or where it came from. I've now proven that because I went and did an analysis on large first order using our visible data, which records all of the touches that we have with accounts. And the first known touch of 399 first order deals that were closed in FY21 and into the beginning of FY22. I put a chart there that shows where those first touches were. Now, the question is, does this matter? Well, it does, because it's helpful to know how they came to us. Were they inbound? Were they looking at our docs on our website? I would actually like to get kind of the double click on this information. And that would certainly inform an SDR into how best to work with this account. I think it's pretty interesting to see from a first order perspective that even today, even though we're a 100 million ARR plus company, the vast majority of our first touches with customers are them coming to our website, looking stuff up. And that makes total sense because we're a developer kind of organic growth company. The one that's interesting is that channel qualified leads are growing as a percentage of the whole. And I'm excited about that because we made a big investment in channel, and we that's how we're going to get some scale here. So I'm excited to be seeing that. And I know Michelle's team and our marketing teams are working hard to grow that as a percentage. We haven't done this analysis for growth. So Haley, that's something we'd have to do. And we are working on how do we operationalize the visible data, which is much more accurate and granular for tracking, first touch, last touch, we know what touch would happen right before an SAO. Like we know all this data, we have it. We just haven't been able to visualize it and put it in the hands of everybody yet. So that's what we're working on now. Haley, any other follow-up questions on that?
No, thank you. I think that's that key point, is having visibility and access into that data, which will allow the SDR teams to be even more strategic with how we're reaching out to the various inbounds we get, as well as the outbound leads that we're prospecting to. So that's great. Thank you.
Cool, great. Thanks for the question. Jim Raleig's not on the call. He asked on slide 9, what is Project Compass? Project Compass is a project we undertook last year between sales and marketing to look at how we can improve our sales and marketing efficiency overall. There's a ton of initiatives that came out of it that we track. We're continually working, and we track all the way up to the board level every quarter. So that's what Project Compass is, and we continue to work on that. From a marketing perspective, we're working on increasing our overall conversion rates between inquiries and opportunities. So what that means is when somebody, gives us their name and email address, how do we do a better job of converting them through processes, SDRs, content, campaigns to an opportunity? How do we increase that conversion rate? If we increase that conversion rate, we get more efficient and we can get more business out of the same dollar spent. There's a lot of projects and sales that are similar. The fact that we started a land team in mid-market was one of the outputs of the Project Compass. So, and there's a bunch of others too. So that's Project Compass. I wanted to communicate we're trying to over communicate this as much as possible. We made, based on this SAO project and some data work that Sindhu had done on the finance team, we made a major lead scoring change that's sort of rolling out late last week and early this week, which is we stopped auto MQLing free mail email addresses when somebody used a free, like a Gmail or a, some other free email address to sign up for a trial. And we still are auto MQLing trials with a business email address, but we will now start to nurture the free mail trialers to try to get them to do some other opt-in thing before we will MQL them. There are exceptions to that. For example, Evan's working on getting our forms to append company information. And as soon as we can do that, we may change some of this logic and actually MQL free mails that come from companies we're targeting or things like that. There's a lot of things we could do, but it's pretty clear that finding opportunities out of free mail trials is needle in a haystack type work. And we'd rather our SDRs and our marketing teams focus on leads with more propensity to buy. And it's pretty clear that business emails is one of those indicators. Now, don't worry, there's no change in demand. You're going to see MQLs go down a lot, but you're not going to see SAOs go down a lot. In fact, we hope that we'll convert more SAOs out of those MQLs. So the reason we're doing this is to increase our conversion rate. You'll see it increase just because there's fewer MQLs in the system. So the SAO conversion rate will necessarily increase, but then we've got to figure out if we can make it go even further. So this is not a change in demand. We are capturing all of these same, humans in our systems. We're just treating them differently in how we operationalize converting those. We're going to use more automation, again, to try to get more efficient and to try to put more higher propensity leads in front of our SDRs and sellers. Matt, you have slide 2.
Yeah. So one thing I didn't see on there around current weaknesses, and maybe it's not one, that's what I wanted to get your thoughts on, were the new ratios and alignment, where before you would have 1, 2, or potentially 3. Now, like I personally have 7 different SDRs. I know one of them told me they have 12 different SALs, and we can't take the strategic approach to try to get the new logos, right, to get the new names, because they're just spread too thin. So now some people I know are doing office hours and inviting everyone just to say, what questions do you have? But it's not the concentrated focus that we used to have. I was just curious, is that one of the contributing factors of weakness, or do you not view that as a factor?
I think that's built into the 2 that I talked about, which are operationally, doing a big org change and capacity. So it's clear we don't have enough SDRs ramped yet. That's number 1, right? So we've hired almost all of the opens. So we've done a great job of refilling those seats, but they aren't all ramped yet. And so I think it's built into that. I will say we are open to iteration again. So I would say, there were issues that we had before that we tried to solve with this. So one is the focus on first order by having a specific team for that. And what you saw with the touch data is that most first orders come inbound. So I think the appropriate thing to do is to, as much as possible, maybe even round robin inbound into our SDRs so that they're each working a reasonable number of leads. But on the growth side, I could see a lot of benefits. On the growth side, we split up by alphabetical accounts, largely because in some regions, specifically the East, we'd lose an SDR for performance reasons, or they'd get hired into sales, whatever reason. And then we'd have a SAL or 2 that were completely without an SDR for a while. So we're like, okay, well, maybe we can spread this around a little bit so that if we lose an SDR, who takes a great job in sales, it doesn't hurt a SAL quite as hard if you're just losing a set of your accounts that the SDR was working on. I'm not sure it's the right solution. It was the solution that we tried. I think I'm open to, on the growth side, is kind of realigning based on SALs, but Hannah and Evan working with Adam need to kind of figure that out and decide if that's something we want to do. So we're hearing the feedback and we're open to an iteration specifically on the growth side. And I think you're right, it could be a contributor. Again, I put that that was in my operational bucket. above.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks for the feedback.
I'll add. So this concept was not just something we came up with, right? We had an outside third party consultant go into all our data and make suggestions on team alignment, team structure, that sort of thing, and then highlighting the strengths and weaknesses that we're seeing. One of them being business continuity with SDRs moving in and out of seats, and then equal distribution of territory. So that's what we're trying to solve for. We don't have enough data to say it is working or it isn't working. Once we have the team fully deployed, I think you'll see that alignment thin out and get a little bit better. You won't have as many SALs aligned to specific SDRs once we have the team ramped. And then we're going to measure the results this quarter and make a decision of, okay, do we need to iterate on this and I'm speaking specifically to land. I'm open to growth changes as well. On the land side, do we need to make a change to this, or are the results actually coming through? And did we solve the problems we were trying to solve for? But I certainly understand what you're saying, Matt, and that's where I've leaned on the managers within the SDR organization to help with territory plans, which I believe each SDR has, and get a better alignment from a strategy perspective for each territory.
All right. Thanks.
I wanted to go back up. We'll hit Tom's question in a minute. Evan had posted a comment that I think is relevant about the MQLs. Do you want to verbalize that, Evan?
Yeah. So the idea here is, one, get a real picture of the conversion rates. We know that 90% of our SAOs come from corporate emails. The second piece is we are making changes to data quality, data standardization, et cetera. That's going to help us. We can actually append to Gmails in some cases, corporate information. So we're not going to ignore the public emails. The biggest piece is, and this is, I'll give Dunk credit for this analysis, is when a personal domain comes through a trial alone. Now, keep in mind, we only made this change on trials for now. When a personal email comes through on a trial alone, it only converts at 0.73%. Versus if they take another action, they converted about 8%. So one of the changes we've made is we're putting in a scoring bump for the trial that will actually accelerate if they take another action and still surface that personal email. So they'll still have a conversation quite quickly. They're just not auto MQLing like they have been in the past and flooding the SDR lead queues.
Thanks, Evan. Tom, number 5. Are you there? Oh, there you go. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. I just wasn't sure if you all use, and I wasn't really talking about me, but if you all use anything, a good visualization tool, and I see you typing now, I just hadn't heard. So I was just wondering about that. I know that that's just a huge asset if being that we might have some data. So I wasn't sure what we were using.
Yep, it's SizeSense. That's where it's our visualization tool, our reporting tool.
Is it good?
It is good.
Okay.
It's really more about quality of data and if the data is available in the warehouse. So we've made huge strides over the last 9 months on this. I want to thank the data team. We now have a set of what we call trusted data, where we can look at our goals and targets. And for the most part, our discussions now are about we're missing somewhere or we're exceeding somewhere. We're having strategy discussions about that. Literally a year ago, we'd be like, do we agree with this data? Is this data right? Let's go look at that. And we're now beyond that for a majority of our data, which is fantastic. So now we're having much more rich business discussions. But some data is not yet available and visualizable in our data warehouse.
Right.
And so you have to get it into the data warehouse, and then you can make it available for visualization. And so we still have a ways to go on that, but we've made huge strides over the last year. And then Tom, you have the next question.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that. And maybe we didn't lose SDRs. It was said a few times, like we're hiring more and we need to get more or whatever. Why are we losing so many SDRs? Well, what's the thought process there? I know a few that left, but are they losing, or are we just outpacing the growth in that area, or what's happening there?
Really two factors. The majority of SDRs we lose get sales jobs, which is great. I think in Q4, 8 SDRs moved into sales. That's literally 25% of our SDRs. So you can understand that's a great thing for the SDRs, but operationally, I don't think we were ready for that exodus into sales roles. And so we're now working on fixing that. We've done two things to fix that. We're working with sales to forecast how many they might need and how many might actually matriculate into sales. And we are hiring what we're calling associate SDRs. We're hiring 4 of those, 2 for EMEA and 2 for North America. These will be junior SDRs who don't have a territory, but they help us get up to speed by learning about, data, uploading lists, sort of support the SDR org. And then as soon as an SDR moves out of a territory, we have someone who's mostly ramped to be able to slot right into a territory. So those are 2 changes we've made. And we're excited about having lots of SDRs in sales because it's a great career path for them. And I think it helps tie our teams together more. And then the second thing is we do performance management. So we have to make sure that our SDRs are performing, and some don't, just like in any organization and like in sales. And so we do that. Other than that, those are sort of the main 2 reasons. And I think we're doing a better job of enabling our SDRs, training them. We have Chris Wang, who spends a lot of time helping SDRs get up to speed and trains them with technical content and industry content. So we've made some investments there. And last thing is the SDR role is traditionally a high turnover role because most people go into that wanting to go do something different. They're building their career towards typically a sales career. So it's sort of by nature a high turnover role.
I want to add one more point. So last year, I talk to the team about this all the time. It's supply and demand, right? We didn't have a lot of openings in the sales team for the SDRs to move on to. We have and had a relatively senior SDR team, people in the role for 2+ years, looking to make that jump. So I think where we've seen attrition outside of GitLab, voluntary attrition, we haven't done a great job of giving them the opportunity to grow and move on to new roles here. That is changing. This year it has changed dramatically and it's getting a lot better. As Todd mentioned, we've seen 6 or 7 people move in the last quarter. And I think we've got a few more that we anticipate are going to move into new roles within GitLab. So it's part of that supply and demand, Tom, of just having that opportunity and for people viewing them not being able to have that opportunity here at GitLab in the past year. Whereas this year, I think that's shifting.
All right, Hans.
Not sure if I worded this question very well, but I'm curious with the data, is there any insight on how SDRs make their target where SDRs have, let's say, mixing of SMB and mid-market leads that come in? Is there any insight on what the percentages are?
We actually have SMB SDRs, mid-market SDRs, and large SDRs. So for most of the world, there are specific SDRs for each of those segments. In APAC, it's a little bit mixed because it's a small team still. So they work across segments. But in EMEA and North America, we separate the SDR team. So an SMB SDR only works SMB accounts. Mid-market only works mid-market accounts. And actually, there's a further delineation in mid-market because we have some SDRs who are only working mid-market 500 employee and above accounts. And then we have large SDRs, some who only work first order and some who work growth accounts. Does that answer your question?
Yes, just a quick follow-up question. So for accounts where you don't know if it's SMB or mid-market until later, how does that get calculated into, if an SDR finds something that turns out to be mid-market or a mid-market person that finds something that turns out to be SMB, how does that factor into the
I don't actually know the answer to that
data
question. That's a good question.
It gets transitioned. So the SDR may get credit for the work at times. We take those case by case. But typically what will happen is the account will flip and move. If nothing has been, an SAO has not been created, the account will move to the proper SDR on the back end through a chat or conversation with sales ops. So we typically, especially on inbound, we'll typically go in and qualify, right? We look at data fox, we look at Zoom info, et cetera. And we'll ask the question and then raise up, sales management chimes in typically and determines where the account sits. If it's after the SAO, we'll usually credit the SDR, but the segment will get the credit for the SAO itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. We're basically out of time, but Mark has a question that I think probably is best followed up with Emily Lears. I don't know if Emily's on, but Mark, I would recommend asking that question to Emily Lears because she runs our ABM program and she can give you some insight into where to find that.
Excellent. And I'm on, so I can, yeah.
Go ahead, Emily.
I don't have the doc, so if somebody could verbalize it, then.
Sure, Mark, would you like to verbalize?
Yeah, you bet, Emily. Just asking if there's any templates available for the account-based marketing program so that as a SAL, I can understand what the asks might be for those accounts that I nominate for the program.
As far as like what campaign we would run against them, or?
Exactly. Like if I nominated an account, then we're going to want to do an internal account-based webinar. We're going to want to do some internal email campaign. Those, like what are the asks basically?
Yeah, absolutely. So Megan O'Dowd, who is our ABM campaign manager, has, for our one to few, she actually has a deck and an overview video of what those campaigns look like. If it ends up being a one-to-one campaign, we will have a specific meeting with the account team to go over what the goals are for the account and kind of what the best path forward is, because a one-to-one is going to look different. We don't typically have a natural path that we just apply because each account will behave a little bit differently and there'll be different parts of the sales funnel. So we would work with you on kind of a one-to-one basis once an account has been accepted into kind of a one-to-one campaign. If it is into a one to few, we would just check in with you and say, hey, this is where we think this one would slot in. Do you agree with that? Megan also will work with you to kind of make sure that we have parent-child accounts correct and that we have all of the right information if there's competitive technology installed, all of kind of those details. So there's typically a kind of an intake issue that we'll go over with you to get all of those details prior to the campaign launching.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.